Alrighty, hello everyone. Welcome to Live Out Loud episode 3. First of all, I just want to say thank you guys so much for bearing with me as I try to get into a schedule of recording these. It's a little difficult with my school schedule right now, so until after midterms in a couple weeks, everything is just going to be a little more sporadic. So thanks for sticking with me. So I am filming this on Sunday, the 21st, I think, so you'll be seeing this probably sometime Monday the 22nd. I did watch the Charlie Kirk memorial service today. I was bawling the entire time, but that will be breaking down a lot of those speeches on Tuesday's episode, so be prepared to cry again. But for today's topics, for the Catholicism Christian section, I actually just wanted to do something a little different. I just wanted to reflect on one of my favorite Bible passages. This psalm that I turn to for comfort, Psalm 139. I think it's something that we all need, especially now. But yeah, it's one of my favorite passages. So I actually did an Instagram post on this a while back, so I'm kind of rehashing it here, but the message still holds true, and it's still one of my favorites, so I want to talk about that. In terms of politics, wanted to briefly talk about President Trump's visit to the UK, if only for the fashion, because I am a fashion girly. So we'll talk a little bit about our wonderful First Lady for that. And then also going to be talking Jimmy Kimmel off the air. And then lastly, for entertainment, I was going to do some sort of music topic, but since Robert Redford recently passed away, I wanted to do a movie review instead. So we'll be talking about Captain America: The Winter Soldier. So anyways, without further ado, let's begin. So as I just mentioned, I wanted to talk about Psalm 139 today. This is one of my favorite passages in the Bible. This is one of the psalms I will turn to and think of often when I need comfort. So like I said before, I did post a reflection of this a while ago on my Instagram, so it's still there if you want to scroll back and find it. Also, fun fact, The Chosen did use this psalm in season 3. I can't remember the exact context. It was obviously a flashback of some sort, but I was so excited when I started reading this, because I'm like, I know where I've heard that before. This was my freshman year of college, before I had transferred schools at my old school. I had to do some Lectio Divina practices for theology. And so for those that don't know what that is, basically it's you choose a scripture passage and you just kind of reflect on that. It's a really cool way to pray. It's a more interactive way to pray. And if you're like me, especially like with undiagnosed ADHD like me, it's nice to be able to like focus on one thing and to have, these different sorts of things, like Lectio Divina practice that my professor had us use. It's like you answer different questions, and it was a nice way to journal, and it was a nice way to pray. And so I think the first passage that I picked was from a list that she gave us. I mean, you could pick anywhere in the Bible, but she gave us a list to kind of get started, and I saw Psalm 139, and I was like, I love the Psalms as, a songwriter and just a writer in general. The Psalms, I think, are just a really good place to look to in terms of how it's written and the style. And so I picked Psalm 139, and I'm so glad I did, because again, as I mentioned several times already, it's one of my favorite passages. So I just kind of wanted to read some of the standout verses in this psalm and kind of what they mean to me. So first we have, behind and before you encircle me and rest your hand upon me. This is verse 5. So whenever I feel the most alone is actually when I feel God the most, because it's in those moments where you feel like you have nothing and nobody that you realize you do still have somebody, and that's God. And so when I was in junior high, as with all people in junior high, I refused to believe that there is somebody, that just had an easy breezy way through junior high. I think we all struggle around that age. And so for me, it was a lot of exclusion, being left out, and not really fitting in. And so I just think back to that point in my life and how really God was like one of the only friends I had in that stage. I still have my best friend from kindergarten. We've been friends since kindergarten. It's absolutely wonderful. So 11 years. Wait, no. I can't do math. 15 years we've been friends. And it's absolutely fantastic. I love my bestie. But still, I mean, there are certain points, during school day where I wouldn't see her and I wouldn't be hanging out with her just because we weren't in the same sort of classes. And so it was just in those moments of feeling so alone that I just had to remember that I really wasn't alone. And so this verse specifically is just a really nice reminder of that. Where can I go from your spirit? From your presence, where can I flee? Even there your hand guides me, your right hand holds me fast. So those are verses 7 and 10. So I kind of briefly mentioned this before, but for those of you that don't know, I actually transferred schools after my freshman year of college. Really, there was a couple factors, but it was mainly that I missed being home. I missed my family. And, I'm proud of myself for trying it, but honestly, moving away is not for everybody. And that's okay. I could go on a whole on rant about why it's okay to stay home for college. You save a whole lot of money, first of all, but yeah, I missed being around my family. And I was actually starting to have anxiety and panic attacks because, it's just, there's so much going on. There's so much going on. But one of my biggest worries that I had with transferring back home is that I wouldn't feel God's presence as much as I did at that school back here. Because where I've been previously, very, very well known for just being such a Catholic community, and it was great and it was wonderful. But again, I just missed my family. I wanted to be at home, and so my worry was that, whatever school I go to back home, I know it's not going to feel the same. But these verses were just that reminder that God is still present. And, it might just mean that my job is a little harder, and it means that I really have to search a little bit harder for him. But again, God is everywhere, no matter the time or place. And I mean, we're seeing this especially come to life now with so many prayer services and vigils for Charlie Kirk. God is certainly moving throughout this nation, and it's such a beautiful thing to see. I'm reminded of Matthew chapter 18, verse 20, where Jesus says, "For where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst of them." And so again, where can I go from your spirit? From your presence, where can I flee? Even there your hand guides me, your right hand holds me fast. So God is everywhere. And sometimes it might feel like we have to search a little bit harder and a little bit deeper for him, but he is still going to be there. Verses 13 through 17 go like this. You formed my inmost being. You knit me in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My very self you know. My bones are not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, fashioned in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw me unformed. In your book all are written down. My days were shaped before one came to be. How precious to me are your designs, O God. How vast the sum of them. So just a beautiful, beautiful 4 verses there. God sees us because he's the one that created us. And I always, whenever I hear this, I always think specifically of the unborn. specifically the part, you knit me in my mother's womb. Right? It's just, there's something so special about that when you really think about it. Like, God knows exactly the kind of person you're going to be, you know, before you even come into the world and do the things that he created you for. He already knows everything about you from the time that, you know, you were smaller than literally nothing, right? And that's just, it's so cool to think about. And again, kind of going back to where, you know, God is with you no matter what, no matter what time or place. He has always been with you since the very beginning, because he's known you since the very beginning, right? He knows our joys, our passions, our talents, our gifts, and our flaws and our weaknesses. And so even though God sees those ugliest parts of us that we hide, we are still precious to him, and he still loves us regardless. And again, humans fail. Okay, we fail all the time because we are flawed. But God is the one where his love never fails, because God is love. And so one of my favorite shows is actually Once Upon a Time. For those that don't know, it's like a fairy tale soap opera. Kind of like fairy tale characters were in like the modern world. They actually get cursed and brought over, and it's actually Snow White and Prince Charming's daughter that has to break the curse. It's really cute. CGI, not so much, but for the most part, it's a really good series, and I recommend it. But Prince Charming and Snow White, they have this little phrase that they say to each other all the time. And I liken it to Princess Leia and Han Solo's "I love you, I know." Prince Charming and Snow White say to each other, "I will always find you." And you know, this is kind of like their phrase, right? That means I love you. But that phrase, "I will always find you," it perfectly describes God, especially in this psalm. Because God will always find you. There's no place that you can go, there's no place he will ever send you where he is not. Now, I'm still wondering what exactly God has planned for me. I have ideas. You know, I might have talked about a little bit about this before, but I truly do feel something different, you know, when I'm performing on stage, when I'm writing my songs and I'm singing them in front of people. Like, that makes me feel like, as cheesy as it sounds, complete. You know, my sophomore year in high school, we talked about charisms and how it's a little bit more than just a special talent you have. It's really kind of where like the Holy Spirit is working in you, and it's like your talent / God's calling for you. It's like working together in one. And so we took a quiz to find out what our charisms were, and for me, I found out it was music and prophecy. And so I thought that those two fit together pretty well. But yeah, but even though there's that, you know, I don't know if I'm meant to be a singer-songwriter as much as I would love that. You know, I'm starting this podcast now. I have no idea where this is going to go. I really, truly don't. I have hopes for it, and I have ideas, but it's really going to be up to God as to what happens with them. You know, I can do all the work, and I am. You know, I'm recording this and I'm putting this out, but ultimately it's gonna be up to God to determine where exactly this is going to go. But the important thing to remember is that no matter what God has in store for you, he's always going to be with you every step of the way. And so that's basically it. Again, this is one of my favorite Psalms. You know, if you haven't picked up your Bible in a while, I'd say there's probably two places that you could start. You could start with the Gospels. But honestly, start out with Psalms. You can read, mostly because you can read through them pretty quickly. But you also glean so much spiritual truth from them, and they're really beautiful to read. So that about wraps up the Catholicism section. Now on to the news. So first, what I briefly wanted to talk about is President Trump's historic second state dinner over in the UK. Really, what I just kind of want to talk about for this, first of all, I just love the amount of respect that was shown for President Trump from Princess Catherine and Prince William greeting President Trump and Melania as they walk off Marine One. That was beautiful. The band, they were playing, you know, all sorts of American songs. They even played the YMCA. Like, come on, that was pretty great. They had a really cool flyover. But really what I wanted to talk about was some of our First Lady's fashion choices. You know, I have long since held the opinion that our First Lady, Melania, is one of the most, if not the most, classiest and elegant First Ladies that we've ever had. Between her and Jackie Kennedy, I would say. But one of Melania's fashion choices over there actually was not really met with, I guess, the warm reception over here, especially compared to some of her other outfits during that visit. For example, when they first touched down over there, she was wearing, I want to say it was like a navy blue peplum suit. And some lighting it looked navy blue, some it looked black, but whatever it was. And then she had this really pretty purple hat on. She actually color coordinated with President Trump's tie, and I thought that was so cute. But for the state dinner, she actually wore this yellow dress, and first of all, the yellow itself was a bold choice, because I feel like that's really not a color that you see a lot of for women's dresses. But it was off the shoulder, it had a slit on the side, and it was paired with a belt that in some lighting looked like a lilac lavender color, some lighting it looked pink, so I'm not exactly sure. I'm inclined to think it was more of a purple shade because purple and yellow are complementary. But yeah, it was that, and it was long sleeve. Personally, I didn't mind it. If there's anyone that could pull off that color, it is Melania Trump. But a lot of people didn't like it, you know, whether they thought it was plain, whether they thought it was, you know, just not that elegant looking for such an important occasion. I tend to think it was very purposeful. And again, that's one thing about Melania's style. It is always with purpose. I mean, I'm thinking back to her inauguration outfit from this last go round back in January. You know, it was that dark blue suit, dress, coat ensemble with the hat. Made her, you know, just look very confident and just like she is in charge here, and more importantly, like she sees everything, but we really couldn't see her with that hat on. And again, I think that was on purpose. And so with this gown, I do think that was very intentional. Personally, I think it's probably because, you know, especially if you saw like Princess Catherine's dress, was absolutely stunning. It could very well be that Melania, when she picked it, her stylist, whoever picked it, picked this dress with this sense that we're going to let the spotlight be on the royals and for other people at the dinner. So personally, I think that that's why she chose it. But again, even though it was very understated and very plain, our First Lady, she pulled it off. She was absolutely lovely. Now, next piece of news is is of course something everyone's been talking about the last few days. Jimmy Kimmel, his show has been pulled off the air indefinitely following his remarks about Charlie Kirk's alleged assassin. So his whole quote, he said, quote, "We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it." End quote. So that was absolutely vile for several reasons. One being it was a blatant lie. You know, statements from his own mother say, quote, "moved to the left in the past year." So no, he was in fact not one of the quote-unquote MAGA gang, as Jimmy put it. But I mean, this is what he said is just another example of the left accusing the right of the very things that they do. So, you know, whether they, you know, in this case, where he says, quote, "trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them." That's literally exactly what the left is trying to do. They're trying to characterize him as somebody, you know, other than one of them. The left is just notorious from doing this, and they have been for quite some time now. I mean, and you see the left with this situation in particular. I mean, they're painting him as the victim in this, not Charlie. The assassin is the victim here. The left's love of criminals I will never understand. It's like with Irina's murderer in North Carolina. They're painting him as a victim to something. I don't even know. I saw this post the other day. Somebody painted this beautiful mural of her, and not even like a day later, somebody painted her killer over top. Like, what is the left so morally depraved that they have twisted things? Is the TDS so bad that whatever Trump says is bad, they have to say is good? Are they that perverse? It's just really sad, and we need to pray for them more than ever, honestly, that they find the truth, because it's insane to me how they keep painting victims of these people while ignoring the actual victims. And as far as Jimmy's comment about trying to score political points, this goes beyond politics, okay? This was an example of what is going on in our country right now, and that is spiritual warfare. It has made itself known front and center. You know, it's, again, as terrible as Charlie's assassination was, we have seen a revival in the church that, quite honestly, I'm not sure. I don't know another way that this could have happened. And then besides that, this is also just a moral issue. Killing anybody is wrong. I don't see why there needs to be any sort of debate about that either. If this was someone on the left that was killed, we would be just as disheartened. In fact, we were back when Melissa Hortman and her husband were killed, and the House, you know, passed a resolution to condemn that. Every single Republican voted yes, we're condemning that. Whereas we do the same thing with Charlie, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was 96 Democrats. Maybe not that. Well, no, I'm pretty sure it was 96. Regardless, a pretty significant portion of them decided to either vote no on condemning it or just voting present. How insane is that? That's just another example of, like, when the left says this is a both sides issue. It's not. It's really not. There is a clear difference, and I mean, I will keep saying this and keep repeating this. I am not saying the right is perfect, because we're not. We have our own flaws. But to say that each side is equal in the political violence, that's just ignorant and wrong. Now, as far as this whole free speech side of it goes, a lot of people are upset because they think this is infringing on free speech. First of all, the government was not the one to take Jimmy off the air. That was the decision of ABC, Disney, and affiliates. They took him off the air. Now, there was, I believe, some FCC pressure to do so, but again, the decision ultimately lied with them. And so people need to understand, like, freedom of speech does not necessarily mean freedom of consequences. Like, you can say whatever you want to say, but if you say something that goes against a company's values, if you say something that in this case was just such a blatant lie, there is going to be consequences for that. And so honestly, I think another part of this too is that, you know, Jimmy Kimmel's ratings, I'm sure, have not really been best. And, you know, honestly, maybe this was just ABC's way of like, oh, you know, we can actually pull the plug on him for a reason now. Another reason I don't think this is a free speech issue. Back in, I want to say it was 2018, Fox was rolling these clips the other night. Jimmy was talking about the Easter egg roll at the White House and played a clip of Trump thanking Melania for all the work that she put in and all the planning that she did. Jimmy proceeded to say, like, oh, I bet she didn't do anything. You know, she just let everyone else do all the work, and then proceeded to make fun of her accent while she was reading a book to the children. If this was really a free speech issue, he would have been off the air a very long time ago. Okay? But he wasn't. Okay, he didn't get kicked off for that. And I'm sure that his statement for this, that was not the only reason why they kicked him off either. You know, and again, no one is stopping him either. That's the other thing. He can go on Instagram, he can go on X, Blue Sky, whatever social media platform he wants. He can start a YouTube channel or Spotify podcast. He could literally, create a Substack. No one else is stopping him. He could also go do live events like a lot of other conservative commentators do. He could literally do any of those options and nobody would stop him. You know, he still has those options available to him. It's not like he got fired. He's not getting prosecuted as far as I know. So this isn't a free speech issue. This is facing the consequences of your actions. All right? You know, there's all sorts of people online that are getting fired from their jobs because they posted things celebrating the assassination. Like, again, if you say something that is so obviously against your, you know, employer's code of conduct or whatever, like, ultimately, again, it's the employer's decision. You are representing a company. You're not just representing yourself. You are representing a company. In Jimmy's case, he was representing ABC and Disney and all their affiliates. He was on a publicly owned broadcasting station. All right. So for him to say something like that, yeah, that's gonna have consequences. Other people getting fired. You are reflecting your company's values, and if that company doesn't like what you're saying, you're celebrating the murder of a father and a husband, yeah, there's gonna be consequences for that. For so long, the left has been so used to getting away with saying whatever they want. And for the record, these are the same people that are getting upset over Jimmy Kimmel's show being canceled. These are the same people that celebrated when a sitting president was banned from Twitter. Remember when Trump got censored on Twitter? Yeah, these are the same people that say free speech is in danger, but they celebrated that. they celebrated when Gina Carano got fired from Disney. Like, the double standards of the left again. They're accusing the right of the very things that they're doing. And so, you know, I watch TV for entertainment, you know, and while I really don't care what your political views are, like a lot of like my favorite actors or actresses or musicians, like they might not agree with me politically, but to go so far as to lie about this on a public station, no less, like, I'm not gonna want to watch that. And the fact it wasn't even that he was making a joke, it was very matter of fact that he was saying that. You know, and the same thing goes for like these other people that are getting fired. I wouldn't really want someone in the healthcare field celebrating the death of another person. I don't want that. You know, a lot of teachers and people working in education are getting fired because they celebrate this. I don't want that either, you know? And so, again, it's not a free speech issue. It's facing up to the consequences of your actions. And for a lot of these people, that's something that they aren't used to. But guess what? The culture is shifting, the tide is changing. We're starting to hold people accountable again. And it's great. So, that being said, we're going to move on to our final topic for the day, which is, of course, the movie review for Captain America: The Winter Soldier. So, as I mentioned before, I was going to do some sort of music topic for today, but Robert Redford recently passed away. And, of course, he was a force in Hollywood, actor, I believe producer, director as well, so he did quite a bit. So while I actually haven't seen many of his movies, I have seen him in Captain America: The Winter Soldier. And so eventually I will probably go through the entirety of the MCU, or at least most of it, but I did want to focus on this one today because it has Robert Redford in it. This is also just one of my very favorite Marvel movies. It's definitely in my top 5. It's my favorite of the Captain America trilogy. It's great. So this is the second movie in the Captain America trilogy, so I highly recommend you watch at least the first Captain America movie. This movie doesn't fall in line until phase 2. So if you were going to watch them in order, you wouldn't get to it for quite a while, but I think really you only really need to see the first Captain America. Maybe watch the first Avengers movie as well. But, you know, just for some more character introductions. But I am going to try to keep this as spoiler-free as I possibly can. So, essentially, Steve Rogers, Captain America, he is part of the Avengers team, but in this movie, it's kind of like an in-between. A lot of these, like, solo movies are, like, in-betweens, you know, as in between working with the whole Avengers team. This is kind of like one of those. So Black Widow makes an appearance in this movie. We get introduced to Sam Wilson, the Falcon, in this movie. But it really is just a Captain America movie, not like a full-scale Avengers movie. So it's kind of showing what he does when he's not saving the world with the rest of the team. So he works for S.H.I.E.L.D., which in the MCU stands for the Strategic Homeland Intervention, Enforcement, and Logistics Division, I do believe. And so in Marvel, it's kind of like a combined version of the CIA and the FBI, you know, just a government intelligence and spy agency sort of thing. The majority of the movie also does take place in Washington, D.C., so that's pretty cool. But anyway, what happens is an ally of Steve's, an ally of Captain America, and dare I say one of his friends, ends up getting killed by an assassin, the Winter Soldier. Now, the Winter Soldier is an assassin employed by Hydra, which is kind of like S.H.I.E.L.D.'s foil. You know, it's, again, this sort of, if you watch the first Captain America movie, it was essentially the Nazi, it started off as the Nazi, like, science division, and then it just kind of became something a little more after the war. But as Captain America investigates his friend's death with Black Widow and the Falcon, he ends up uncovering this conspiracy that could literally, you know, kill a lot of people. So of course, it ends up being a save the world type movie. This is definitely one of the least comic booky movies out there, in the MCU especially. If you're familiar with any of the Marvel movies, they are pretty comic booky at times, which that's their genre, that's what they are. But this one in particular isn't very comic booky. It's really gritty and realistic in the sense that I feel like this could legitimately happen. Granted, we might be a few years off, several years off from something like it happening, but it is a lot more realistic, you know, because there's no like aliens, there's no you know, like superpowers. If you ignore Captain America's super soldier serum, there's really no like superpowers or anything. It's really just a lot of like government stuff and a little bit of politics, and so it is pretty realistic. In that sense, I feel like it's similar to movies in the DC universe, that grittiness and that darkness. It is a spy movie. It's, I would say, probably along the lines of a thriller movie as well. It's action-packed, so if any of that interests you, you probably like this movie. Another little fun fact, it did come out on my birthday back in 2014, so that's really cool. So that could potentially be one of the reasons why I like it so much. But for a movie that is now 11 years old, the CGI has held up incredibly well. So again, in an effort to keep this spoiler free, that's really kind of all I can say. Do not look at the cast list before you watch it. That is something I'm guilty of that when I'm watching a new movie, but if you truly want to go in absolutely blind, make sure you watch the first Captain America movie at least, but don't go, and that's just a standard rule for all Marvel movies. Don't look at the cast list, you know, just, you'll thank me later. But in an effort to keep this spoiler free, I wanted to talk about some nerdy film aspects to finish off. The stunt choreography is top notch in this movie. Some of my favorite Marvel action scenes come from this movie. There is, for example, one of the showdowns between Captain America and the Winter Soldier. The Winter Soldier does this really cool like knife flip. It's really cool to see, and it's something so small, but it's one of those little details that you watch every time, you're like, oh, that's so cool. In fact, I vividly remember my cousin, he would always try to recreate the knife flip with like a TV remote or something. So I mean, that was always kind of funny to watch. Cinematography is also really beautiful in this movie. There's some beautiful shots. Like I said, this takes place in DC, so there's some beautiful shots of the Washington Monument, the reflecting pool, and there's also when the Winter Soldier catches the shield. It honestly is like the perfect foil to whenever Steve throws the shield. And so it's like, it's the reverse, you know, somebody's catching it, and it's a really cool shot because you see his metal arm, he catches it. The background, you know, is very dark. He has the mask on, smudge, you know, not eyeliner, but whatever it is on his face, and windblown hair. This is one of my favorite shots in the MCU ever. And then lastly, one of the really cool shots is when Steve actually is witnessing the surgeons trying to save his friend that got shot. And they do some really cool camera work because Steve and Black Widow and another character, Maria Hill, they're all standing behind the operating room window, and they're looking in. And the camera, it's so cool because rather than you see the operating room and then the camera cuts to the characters and rather do back and forth like that, they have the camera looking in at the operating room, and the camera is focused to where we see the backs of Steve and Black Widow, Natasha. We see like the backs of their heads, but we see their reflection in the glass, and that's how we see their reaction to what is happening. So that's some really cool camera work, and it's really, really cool how they pull that off. And then lastly, of course, as a musician, I'm going to talk about the soundtrack. As I mentioned before, the Winter Soldier is Hydra's like top assassin. He's someone that basically leaves like no trace. Like he's very much, as Natasha points out in the movie, like a ghost story. And so obviously you need something really like eerie and creepy to capture that. So it's really cool because in the soundtrack, to create the theme for the Winter Soldier, this musical motif whenever he's on screen, the composer recorded a scream and then like pitched it and modified it to where it doesn't really sound like a scream anymore. You can still kind of tell it sounds very distorted, but it's so cool because it's so like unconventional. It's an unconventional way to make a musical motif, and so it automatically makes this like sense of unease, and you're like, what is going on? But that's exactly the way the Winter Soldier makes his targets feel and makes the characters in the movie feel, and so that is a job well done. So again, that was Captain America: The Winter Soldier, one of my favorite Marvel movies of all time. Again, at least watch the first Captain America movie. It's been a while since I watched it, but I'm pretty sure that that's really all the context that you'll need. If any of you are interested in what order I would watch the Marvel movies in, well, let me know, and I will give that to you. There's so many off the top of my head, I can't really list them out right now. But yeah, so that is pretty much it. That wraps up today's episode. Next time, I think for the Catholicism section, I am finally going to talk about what I've been wanting to talk about since I started this, and that is dating as a Christian in today's society. You know, that's something, it's been on my heart for quite some time. I really want to talk about it, and especially after watching Erica Kirk's speech today and how much she and Charlie loved each other. It's something we gotta talk about, y'all. It is something we just have to talk about. So along the lines of that, the news section for Tuesday will probably be along the lines, we'll definitely talk about a lot of the speeches that happened, and if any other big headlines come up, then we'll talk about those, but I have a feeling that it'll probably just be breaking down some of those speeches. And then the entertainment section will probably be something music related this time. I haven't exactly decided what, but I'll figure it out before Tuesday. If anyone has any suggestions, just let me know. So anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, listening. Uh, it really does mean a lot. And yeah, just kind of circling back to the very beginning when I talked about, what God wants me to do. I don't know exactly. I'm just kind of going along and, talk about this more on Tuesday, but I was really inspired by Erica's speech today when she was talking about how Charlie just never waited for anything, and he really just was all in, and he did everything, almost immediately, because why wait? No time to lose. And so yeah, I'm kind of rambling a bit now, but anyway, I look forward to recording this next episode. And again, I apologize, these are so sporadic right now, but after midterms, like first week of October, after the first week of October, things will hopefully be a little more consistent. So yeah, thanks for sticking with me, because again, I'm just a one-woman show over here. But I love it, and it's great. So yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I will talk to you guys next time. God bless y'all. Bye.